Lonely Mafia boss opens the door. To the one person he never expected, a desperate plea. A devastating secret buried for years that will shatter his world and force him to choose between his empire and a love he thought was lost forever. If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. The rain beat against the window of Daniel's empty penthouse. It was a cold, steady sound. It matched the cold, steady emptiness inside him. 5 years. 5 years since the car bomb had taken Allegra. 5 years since color had left his world. He was the boss of the most powerful family in the city, but he lived in a museum of ghosts. He stood by the glass, a glass of amber whiskey untouched in his hand, staring at the city lights that blurred in the wet darkness. The buzzer from the private lobby rang. He ignored it. It rang again, insistent. A sharp, angry sound. Only a few people had that code. His underboss, Mark, his consigliere, David. They wouldn't bother him tonight unless it was war. With a low curse, he walked to the intercom. What? A voice, strained and familiar, choked by the rain. Daniel, please, it's Alina. Allegra's sister, the quiet one. The one who painted flowers and jumped at loud noises. The one who looked at him with wide, frightened eyes even before Allegra died. He hadn't seen her since the funeral. Grief kept people away, or fear. He almost said no, almost told her to go away, but her name and the ghost of Allegra it carried made his finger press the entry button. He opened the heavy oak door to his apartment. She stood there, drenched. Rainwater pooled at her feet on the polished floor. Her blonde hair was dark and stuck to her pale face. She wasn't wearing a coat, just a simple dress now soaked through, but it wasn't the rain that made her shake. Her eyes were huge, hollow with a terror he recognized. It was the kind of terror that came from seeing death up close. In her hands, she clutched a leather-bound journal. It was worn, the edges soft. He knew that journal. He'd given it to Allegra on their first anniversary. Alina, his voice was rough from disuse. What is this? How did you get in the building? She pushed past him into the apartment, her movements jerky. She looked around the dark, sterile room, then back at him. She's alive, Daniel. The words didn't make sense. They hung in the air between them, stupid and impossible. He just stared. Allegra, Alina gasped, her breath hitching. She's not dead, the bomb. It was a cover, she's alive. Daniel's world tilted. The careful, agonizing structure of his grief cracked. A hot, dangerous anger surged up to fill the cracks. He took a step toward her. What kind of sick game are you playing? I saw the car, I identified the remains. The memory was a physical pain. You identified a body the FBI needed you to identify. Alina shot back, her voice gaining strength. She thrust the journal at him. She was terrified of the life, of the war, of you in the end. He flinched as if struck. Of me. Your paranoia, Daniel, the security checks, the armed men following her to buy coffee, the way you looked at every friend, every waiter like they were a threat. She felt like she was in a gilded cage that was slowly shrinking. She couldn't breathe. She saw you becoming a ghost, and she didn't want to become one too. He took the journal. The leather felt alive under his fingers. He didn't open it. So she left me. She made a deal, Alina whispered, collapsing onto a sofa as if her legs gave out. With Agent Paul Ramsey, FBI. He promised her a new life, a clean slate. The bomb was staged. She went into witness protection, WITSEC. Daniel's mind, trained for strategy and betrayal, raced. He saw it, the too convenient forensic report, Ramsey's sympathetic face at the funeral, the way certain rivalries had mysteriously cooled afterward. He had been a pawn, his greatest pain a federal operation. Why are you telling me this now? He asked, his voice deadly quiet. Because Ramsey's gone rogue, Alina said, tears finally mixing with the rain on her cheeks. He's not protecting her anymore. He's using her. He kept a copy of her debriefing files. Everything she told them about your operations, about the Rosses, the Costas family, everything. He's blackmailing all of you. He sends little pieces of what she knows to each family, demanding payments to keep the rest quiet. Daniel's blood ran cold. It was a brilliant, suicidal play. Pit all the families against each other while a Fed siphoned money from them all. And Allegra was the key. If the families find out she's the source, Daniel began. They'll hunt her, Alina finished. They won't believe she was forced. They'll think she's a rat working with Ramsey. They'll send cleaners, and Ramsey, once he has enough money or if he gets spooked, he'll kill her to tie up the loose end. He's already moved her 3 times in the last month. I only know this because she managed to smuggle this journal and a letter to me through an old drop we had as kids. She's in a safe house somewhere upstate, but she's not safe. She's a prisoner. Daniel finally opened the journal. He flipped to a random page. Allegra's elegant handwriting filled his vision. Daniel came home tonight. He didn't see me. He saw a thread in the shadow behind me. He had Mark search the whole apartment. I tried to hold him, but he was made of stone. The man I love is disappearing into the fortress he's building. I'm losing him, and I'm so afraid. He turned another page, his throat tight. Ramsey made the offer again today, a way out. It feels like a betrayal, but staying feels like a slow death for both of us. If I stay, my love for him will turn to ash, or I'll end up a casualty in a war I never wanted. God forgive me. The last entry, dated just a week ago, was scribbled, frantic. Ramsey is not a protector, he's a predator. He looks at me like an asset. He's talking about monetizing my story. I heard him on the phone talking about the Rossi shipment. He's playing all sides. Alina, if you read this, I'm sorry, I was wrong. Tell Daniel. Tell him I never stopped. The lighthouse is our truth. He'll understand. The lighthouse? Their place. A rundown old lighthouse on the coast where they'd spent their first weekend together, before the empire, before the blood. It was their code. Their absolute truth. Daniel closed the journal. The lonely Mafia boss was gone. In his place was Don Daniel Costa, a man of singular, ruthless purpose. The grief that had paralyzed him for 5 years was now fuel. It was a white-hot fire. She's at the old lighthouse, he said, his voice no longer rough, but clear and sharp as a blade. Alina nodded, hope flooding her face for the first time. How did you? It doesn't matter. He was already moving. He picked up a secure phone from his desk, pressed a single button. Mark, wake everyone up. We have a situation. I need a full tactical team, quiet, no family flags. We're going to Point Breaker. And David, I need everything on FBI agent Paul Ramsey. Bank records, aliases, mistresses, parking tickets. Find his pressure point. We move in 1 hour. He put the phone down and looked at Alina. You're staying here. My men will guard you. No, she stood up. I have to come. She's my sister. I brought this to you. He walked over to her, looking down at her fragile, determined frame. What you did took more courage than you know. But where we're going, Alina, it's not for the brave. It's for the brutal. You stay for her. He turned and walked towards his bedroom, already stripping off his soft sweater. He needed the Kevlar vest. He needed his weapons. The ghosts were gone. Allegra was alive, and someone was going to pay a very, very high price for taking her from him twice. The convoy was a shadow moving north along the coast road. 3 black SUVs, their lights off, using night vision goggles and moonlight. Daniel sat in the back of the lead vehicle, the journal on his lap. He kept touching the cover. Alive. The word echoed in his skull, beating back the years of darkness. But with it came a storm of other words. Terrified. Paranoia of you. Mark, his bald head gleaming in the dashboard lights, glanced back from the passenger seat. Perimeter scan shows 1 heat signature in the lighthouse structure. 2 more in a vehicle, parked about 200 yards down the access road. Could be Ramsey's men. Or Costas's, or Rossi's, Daniel said quietly. If Ramsey is shopping her information, others may have pieced it together too. Rules of engagement are simple. The 2 in the vehicle are hostile. The person in the lighthouse is Allegra Costa. She is to be extracted unharmed, at any cost. Understood, boss. The lighthouse loomed ahead, a skeletal finger of stone against the starless sky. It was abandoned, the glass of the lantern room long shattered. The ocean roared below, a constant, angry sound. The SUVs stopped a mile out. The team moved in on foot, silent over the rocky ground. Daniel moved with them, a pistol heavy in his hand. He saw the car, a dark sedan, just where Mark said. 2 figures inside, smoking. Not FBI, too sloppy. They looked like low-level muscle, probably hired by Ramsey or maybe sent by a rival family who'd gotten a tip. Daniel gave a hand signal. Two of his men peeled off, ghosts in the darkness circling the car. The rest approached the lighthouse door, which was slightly ajar. A sudden shout cut the night. Then the muffled thump-thump of silenced gunfire from the direction of the sedan. It was over in seconds. Daniel didn't look back. His focus was the door. He pushed it open, the old wood groaning. The ground floor was empty, smelling of salt and decay. A spiral staircase wound up into darkness. "Allegra," he called, his voice echoing. "It's Daniel." Silence, then a small broken sound from above. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his men following. He burst into the lantern room at the top. The wind whipped through the broken windows, and there she was. Huddled in a corner, wrapped in a thin blanket, was Allegra. She was thinner, her dark hair shorter and dyed a dull brown, but her eyes, those were the same deep, dark pools he had drowned in for years. They were filled with a fear that shattered him. She stared at him, trembling. "Daniel, is it really you?" Her voice was a hoarse whisper. He knelt in front of her, holstering his gun, his hands up to show he meant no harm. The sight of her, real and breathing, stole the air from his lungs. "It's me, Allie. I'm here." She flinched at the old nickname. "He said you'd kill me. Ramsey. He said if I ever tried to run, or if you ever found me, you'd put a bullet in my head for betraying you." Daniel's heart turned to stone. "He used my reputation against you to keep you obedient." He reached out slowly, touching her cheek. She was ice cold. I could never." A tear traced a path through the dirt on her face. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I was so scared. I thought it was the only way to save myself, and maybe save you from the worry of having me as a target." The journal's words came to life. "The man I love is disappearing." He had done this. His love, twisted by his world, had become a cage. He had driven her into the arms of a wolf. "All that matters is you're alive," he said, his voice thick. "And I'm getting you out of here." He helped her stand. She was unsteady. As they turned, a figure appeared at the top of the stairs. It wasn't one of his men. It was a man in a cheap suit, holding a service pistol. He had the weary, cunning face of a corrupt cop. Agent Paul Ramsey. Well, Ramsey said, a nasty smile on his face. "The grieving widower. I have to say, Costa, you got here faster than I expected. The sister must have grown a spine." Daniel stepped in front of Allegra. "The game's over, Ramsey. You have nothing left to sell." "Oh, I disagree," Ramsey said, his eyes flickering. "I have her, and now I have you walking into a compromised location. I call the right people, tell them you're here meeting with your turned wife, the federal informant. It'll start a war that will wipe your family off the map. Or you pay me a very large one-time fee and I vanish. She can go back to being dead for all I care." "You're not walking out of here," Daniel said, his tone flat. Ramsey laughed. "You think your men have the drop. I have a sniper on the ridge. His laser is on your heart right now, my insurance." Daniel didn't blink. He had anticipated this. Ramsey was a talker, a manipulator. He wouldn't do the dirty work himself if he could help it, but he was also arrogant. "Mark," Daniel said, not raising his voice. From the shadowy doorway behind Ramsey, Mark's massive frame materialized. He pressed the muzzle of a gun to the back of Ramsey's head. "Your sniper is taking a nap, Fed. Drop it." Ramsey's smile vanished. His eyes widened in panic. He slowly lowered his pistol. Daniel took a step forward. The rage he'd held back for 5 years, focused now on this man, was a living thing. "You took 5 years of my life. You made her live in fear. You used my wife as a commodity." "It was just business," Ramsey spat. "For me," Daniel said, pulling a knife from his belt, "this is personal." Daniel didn't kill Ramsey in the lighthouse, not in front of Allegra. He wanted to, the need was a physical ache in his hands, but he saw the fresh terror in her eyes. He had promised a different kind of man was here now. So he had Mark knock Ramsey unconscious with the butt of his gun. "Take him to the warehouse by the docks," Daniel ordered, his voice low. "Keep him comfortable. We'll have a long talk later." They wrapped Allegra in a thick tactical jacket and guided her down the stairs and out into the night. She shied away from his men, her eyes darting everywhere. When they passed the sedan with the two dead men inside, she let out a small, choked sob. Daniel put an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close, shielding her view. "Don't look, just keep moving." The ride back to the city was silent. Allegra sat curled in the corner of the SUV, as far from Daniel as the seat allowed, staring at her hands. Alina was waiting at the penthouse, and when the sisters saw each other, they fell into a desperate, weeping embrace. Daniel stood back, feeling like an intruder. This was their moment, their relief. His was a colder, harder thing, still forming in the pit of his stomach. Once Alina had taken Allegra to a guest room to shower and change, Daniel's mask fell. He walked into his study, where David, his consigliere, was waiting. David was an older man, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He looked more like a librarian than a mafia strategist. "Ramsey is secured," David said. "And I've started digging. It's worse than we thought. He didn't just blackmail the families. He's been skimming from FBI evidence lockers for years. Art, cash, drugs. He used Allegra's setup as a perfect cover to explain his sudden wealth. He was planning one last big score before disappearing." "Who else knows she's alive?" Daniel asked, pouring 2 fingers of whiskey, finally needing it. "The Costa's family, I believe," David said, adjusting his glasses. "One of my contacts says Leo Costas has been asking strange questions about the old bomb investigation. He's paranoid. If he even suspects she's talking, he'll act. The Rosses. Maybe. They're quieter, but that makes them more dangerous." Daniel swallowed the drink, the burn doing nothing to warm the cold calculation inside him. "We need to reset the board. Allegra Costa is dead. That story has to hold. We create a new narrative." "And Ramsey?" David asked. "He disappears, permanently. But first, he gives us everything. Every file, every recording, every name of every dirty cop and rival enforcer he's been dealing with. We use his information to burn our enemies and cover our tracks." Daniel's eyes were like flint. "Then we make an example of him, a message to anyone who even thinks of touching what's mine." There was a soft knock at the door. Alina stood there, her eyes red but clear. "She wants to talk to you, alone." Daniel's heart hammered against his ribs. He nodded to David, who slipped out. He followed Alina to the guest room door. She gave him a small, encouraging smile and walked away. He took a deep breath and opened the door. Allegra was sitting by the window, wearing one of Alina's sweaters. It was too big for her. She looked small, washed, clean, but fragile, like a piece of old porcelain. She was staring out at the city, but she turned when he entered. The silence stretched. 5 years of grief and 1 night of chaos hung between them. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice still rough. "For coming, for not doing what he said you would." "I told you," he said, staying near the door, giving her space. "I could never hurt you." "You looked like you wanted to kill Ramsey back there," she said, watching him carefully. "I did," he admitted. "I do, for what he did to you, but more for what I did to you." She looked down at her hands. "The journal." "I read some of it," he said, his voice softening. "You were right. I was disappearing. The life, the power. It was eating me alive. I was so busy building walls to keep danger out, I didn't see I was building them to keep you in." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I loved you so much, Daniel. It was suffocating me. The constant fear. Not of your enemies, but of losing you to the darkness. Every time you came home with that cold look in your eyes, a piece of you was gone." He crossed the room slowly, kneeling before her chair like a supplicant. He didn't touch her. "I am so sorry, Allie. I can't erase those years. I can't undo my mistakes. But the man who let you walk into that hell, he died in that car bomb too. The grief, it changed me. Hollowed me out, seeing you today. It's like being filled back up with light, but I know it's not that simple. I know I have to earn this, to earn you." She reached out then, her fingers trembling as they brushed the scar on his temple, a souvenir from a long-ago fight. "I never stopped loving you either, even when I was most afraid. It was the lighthouse, our truth. I clung to that." He took her hand, pressing it to his lips, closing his eyes. The touch was an electric shock of memory and hope. "Then let me build something new, not a fortress, a home. But first, I have to make the world believe you're still gone. To keep you safe while I clean up the mess." Fear flashed in her eyes again. "What does that mean? More violence?" "It means protecting what's mine," he said, but his tone was gentle. "It means making sure no one ever uses you as a weapon or a target again. You and Alina will go to a secure place I have overseas, just for a little while, until it's calm." She searched his face, looking for the old paranoia, the coldness. She saw determination and a pain as deep as her own, but not the icy void that had frightened her. She nodded slowly. "Okay, but Daniel, no more lies between us. Ever, in or out of this life, that's the only way." "No more lies," he swore, the words a sacred vow. "Only truth." He helped her to her feet, and they stood together by the window, looking out at their city, a kingdom built on blood that now held the only thing that ever mattered to him. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. But this time, he wasn't fighting for territory or money. He was fighting for a second chance. The next 48 hours were a blur of quiet, ruthless activity. Daniel operated on 2 tracks. The first was security. He sent Allegra and Alina, under the guard of his most trusted men, to a fortified villa in Sicily owned by a friendly, old-world don who owed him a favor. The location was known only to Daniel and Mark. They traveled under false passports, their electronic footprint erased by David's expert hackers. Daniel watched Allegra's car drive away from a hidden garage. A knot in his chest, so tight he couldn't breathe, until David confirmed their plane had taken off. The second track was the war. Daniel stood in a cold, damp warehouse by the docks. The air smelled of salt, oil, and now, fear. Paul Ramsey was tied to a metal chair, his suit dirty, one eye swollen shut from Mark's initial persuasion. Daniel pulled up another chair and sat facing him close. He didn't yell. His voice was calm, conversational, which was somehow worse. "Paul, we need to talk about your retirement plan." Ramsey spat blood on the concrete floor. "You're dead, Costa. You think the Bureau doesn't know I'm here? They'll tear this city apart." David, standing in the shadows with a tablet, spoke softly. "According to your own encrypted emails, Paul, you told your supervisor you were taking personal leave to visit your sick mother in Florida. You bought a one-way ticket to the Caymans under the name Peter Riggs for tomorrow. The Bureau thinks you're about to flee. They're not looking for you. They're building a case against you." Ramsey's bravado cracked. A flicker of real panic showed in his eyes. "Here's what's going to happen," Daniel continued, leaning forward. "You are going to give David access to every file, every backup, every cloud storage, every safety deposit box you have. You will give us every name of every person you've dealt with, cops, agents, Costas's men, Rossi's lieutenants. You will do this willingly and with speed." "Or what?" Ramsey sneered, though it wavered. Daniel's expression didn't change. "Or I give you to Leo Costas. I tell him you were the one who sold him out to the Rosses last year, the reason his son got arrested. I tell him you've been keeping Allegra as a pet to blackmail him with. Leo is not a calm man. He is creative. He would take weeks to finish with you. I, on the other hand, am a businessman. I just want the information. Your end, if you cooperate, will be quick. A single bullet. A clean death. The kind you didn't plan for Allegra." The choice was laid out with chilling clarity. A slow, agonizing death at the hands of a rival, or a swift end after confession. Ramsey sagged in the chair, defeated. "The login is on a key fob, in my left shoe." David retrieved it. Within an hour, the data began to flow. It was a treasure trove of corruption. Names, dates, amounts, audio recordings of meetings with Costas's underboss, photos of evidence locker thefts, and a detailed log of every piece of information he had shopped from Allegra's debriefings. Daniel studied the list of people who had received blackmail demands. Leo Costas was at the top, but so was a name that made Daniel's blood run cold: James Rossi. The head of the Rossi family was a snake, quiet and patient. If he had gotten pieces of Allegra's information, he would have pieced together the truth. He would be waiting, planning his move. "We have to move first," Daniel said to David and Mark in his office later that night. "Costas is loud and stupid. He's the immediate threat. Rossi is the poison in the wine. We deal with Costas publicly. We use Ramsey's information to set him up for a fall so big, the feds will be on him for years. That keeps the authorities busy and happy. And Rossi? Mark asked, cracking his knuckles. For Rossi, we need to speak his language, not with a bomb but with a whisper. David, what's James Rossi's heart? David scrolled through the data. His daughter, Jessica, she's 20, pre-med. He keeps her completely separate from the business. She thinks he's a real estate developer. He's pathologically protective of her. It's his only soft spot. A plan, cold and precise, formed in Daniel's mind. It was a risk. Touching family was a line rarely crossed, a step that could ignite an all-out war. But Rossi had already crossed that line by entertaining information about Allegra. Daniel was just returning the message. Get me a secure, untraceable line, Daniel said. I'm going to call James Rossi. James Rossi's voice was smooth as silk on the phone. Daniel, to what do I owe this rare pleasure? Calling to discuss a territorial dispute. No dispute, James, Daniel said, standing by his window. I'm calling about a mutual problem, Agent Paul Ramsey. A slight pause. I don't know that name. Of course you do. He's been sending you envelopes, little pieces of my late wife's memories, for a price. The silence on the other end was icy now. I have him, Daniel continued. And I have everything, every file, every recording. I know what he sent you. I also know you're too smart to have acted on it yet. You were waiting to see how it played out. What do you want, Costa? Rossi's voice had lost its polish. I want the narrative to stay clean. Allegra Costa is dead. She was always dead. Ramsey is a corrupt Fed who tried to exploit a tragedy to play us against each other. He failed. I am dealing with him. As a sign of good faith, and to ensure this story holds, I am giving you the names of the 2 Costas soldiers who were working with Ramsey to leak your shipping routes. Consider it a gift. Daniel could almost hear Rossi's mind working, weighing the value of the gift against the threat it implied. Daniel had the information. He had power. And in return, Rossi asked carefully, in return, you forget you ever heard Allegra's name. You help me sell the story of Ramsey's corruption to the other families, and we go back to our quiet, respectful distance. Daniel let the next words hang in the air. I know about Jessica, pre-med, bright future. I would hate for any of this unpleasantness to cast a shadow on her world, just as I know you would never want any shadow to fall on my family. The threat was clear, elegant, and mutual, a standoff. After a long moment, Rossi spoke. Ramsey was a corrupt Fed, a liar. I received some fraudulent documents which I immediately discounted. My condolences again on your loss. The message was received and reciprocated. Thank you, James. I'll have those names sent to you. Daniel hung up, one problem contained. Now for the louder one. Using Ramsey's information, Daniel's men anonymously tipped off the FBI to a massive Costa's drug shipment coming in through the harbor. They provided serial numbers from stolen cash that would be found in Leo Costas's own safe. They fed the information like poison into the system. 2 nights later, the news channels showed chaotic scenes. FBI and DEA agents swarming Costa's warehouses, arresting Leo Costas himself as he screamed curses from the doorstep of his mansion. It was a spectacular takedown. The Costas family was in disarray, leaderless and under federal siege. They were no longer a threat. With the board cleared of immediate dangers, Daniel turned to the final piece, Paul Ramsey. He went back to the warehouse one last time. Ramsey looked broken. All the arrogance gone. Did you get it all? Ramsey whispered. We did, Daniel said. Then get it over with. Daniel nodded to Mark, who stepped forward, but Daniel raised a hand. No, not here. They drove Ramsey. The Sicilian sun warmed the old stones of the terrace. Daniel held Allegra, and for a long time they just stood there. The wind carried the smell of the sea and lemon trees. It was a clean smell, nothing like the cold, wet concrete and blood smell of the city they had left behind. Finally, Allegra pulled back just enough to look up at him. Her eyes were clear now, but there were shadows in them. Shadows he had put there. What now, Daniel? She asked. Her voice was quiet. We can't stay hidden forever. We don't have to hide, he said. He kept his arms around her. We just have to be smart. The world thinks you're gone, that's our strength. We can build a new life, a real one. But your work, the family. Mark and David can handle the day-to-day, he said. He had thought about this, planned it. I'll still be the boss, but from a distance. I'll make the big decisions. They run the operations. I won't lie, Allie. The phone will ring sometimes, but I won't be in those rooms anymore. I won't be carrying that smell home to you. She searched his face. She was looking for the truth. Can you really do that? Step away. For you, he brushed a thumb over her cheek. I'd burn it all down. Stepping away is the easy choice. A small, real smile touched her lips. It was the most beautiful thing he'd seen in 5 years. I don't want you to burn it down. I just want you, the man under the armor. Then that's who you have. They spent the next few weeks in a quiet bubble. Daniel stayed at a separate villa nearby for security, but he spent every day with Allegra and Alina. They walked along the cliffs. They ate simple meals. They talked. They didn't talk about the past much. They talked about the future. It was fragile, like a new green shoot pushing through cracked earth. Allegra started to paint again. Alina bought her canvases and oils. The first thing she painted was the lighthouse, but she didn't paint it as a dark, scary prison. She painted it at dawn with the first light of the sun hitting the stone, the sea calm below. It was a painting of survival, of a new day. One evening, Daniel got a secure call from David. He took it on the terrace, away from the women. It's done, David's voice crackled. Ramsey's digital ghost has been useful. We fed the last of his evidence to the feds, pointing at Costas's remaining captains. The investigation is eating them alive. The Rossi family has been quiet. James has recalled his men from the border zones, a peace offering. Good, Daniel said, watching the sunset. And our house. Clean, no whispers about Allegra. The story is solid. To the world, Don Costa is a grieving widower who took a long trip to Italy to mourn. He will return a changed man, perhaps less involved in the nightlife. Daniel almost smiled. Thank you, David. One more thing, David said, his tone careful. There is a vote. The captains, they are nervous, your absence. The Costas vacuum. They want to see you, to hear your voice, to know the king is still on the throne. Daniel's old instincts stirred. A leader who disappears is a leader who gets replaced. But the thought of going back to that paneled room, to the smoke and the hungry eyes, made his skin crawl. Set up a video link, Daniel said. Secure, next week I'll speak to them, they'll see me. They'll hear my orders, but I won't be in the room. That is unconventional, David said slowly. The world is unconventional now, Daniel replied, and ended the call. He told Allegra about it that night. They were sitting in the garden, listening to the crickets. You have to go back, she said. It wasn't a question. Not to stay, just to secure things, to show I'm still in control, so we can have this life without looking over our shoulders every second. She nodded, but he saw the fear flicker in her eyes, the fear that the city would swallow him again. He took her hand. Come with me. She froze. What? Come back with me, not to the old penthouse, to a new place. A house outside the city, with a wall, yes, with guards, yes, but with a garden, with a studio for you to paint. You won't be Allegra Costa, the ghost. You'll be Allegra, my wife, who has been living abroad for her health after a terrible tragedy. A private, grieving woman. The world will accept a recluse. They don't need to see your face. They just need to know you exist again, so my life makes sense to them. The plan was daring. It was a risk, but hiding forever was also a prison. The sister of the dead wife shows up, then the dead wife reappears, she asked, her logic sharp. Won't people ask questions? Alina will stay here in Italy. She'll be our cover. If anyone digs, they'll find Alina Costa living quietly in Sicily. They'll assume a case of mistaken identity years ago. The paper trail will support it. You will be a different story, a miracle of sorts, a woman who needed to disappear to heal. She was silent for a long time, thinking it through. You've planned all this. I've planned for a life with you, he said simply. The only way to have it is to control the story. We control it together. She squeezed his hand. Okay, together. The return was orchestrated like a military operation. Daniel went first. His arrival back in the city was low-key but noticed. He held the video conference with his captains. They saw him, tanned in a light sweater, sitting in a sunlit room that was clearly not in the city. His voice was calm, his orders absolute. He praised their work. He confirmed Mark as his street underboss and David as his top advisor. He said he would be dividing his time, but his authority was unchanged. The message was clear. I am still your Don, but the game has evolved. They accepted it. Power, when it is stable, is all they ever wanted. A month later, Allegra came home. They didn't use the penthouse. They moved into a secluded, modern house on a wooded estate an hour from the city center. It had high walls, but inside, it was all light and glass and space. Her painting studio had a northern window. Her return was a whisper, not a shout. A few trusted associates saw her. The story trickled out. Daniel's wife, Allegra, had not died in the bomb. She had been critically injured, disfigured, her survival kept secret to protect her during her long, painful recovery. She had been in private clinics abroad. Now she was home, but she wished for privacy. The Mafia world, full of its own superstitions and respect for tragedy, accepted it. A man who loved his wife, that much was a man they understood. It even added to Daniel's legend. One night, months later, Daniel came home late. He had been in the city for a meeting. He still smelled of cigar smoke and city air. He found Allegra in her studio. She was working on a new painting. It was of two hands clasped together. One hand was strong with a scar across the knuckles. The other was slender with a simple gold band on its finger. They were holding on tight. She turned when she heard him. She didn't flinch at the smell. She just looked at him, seeing the tension in his shoulders. "Bad day?" she asked. James Rossi tried to test a boundary. A small one, a shipping route. "What did you do?" I reminded him of our understanding. Daniel's voice was flat. "I had Mark send a team to intercept the shipment. They let the drivers go, but they burned the trucks. A financial loss. A clear message. No blood, just business." Allegra walked over to him. She put her hands on his chest, over his heart. "And that's enough. For a man like Rossi, for now, the dance never really ends, Allie, but the steps are quieter now." He wrapped his arms around her, leaning his forehead against hers. "This, coming home to you, this is what makes it worth it. This is the peace." She believed him. She saw the effort he made every day. The man who had ruled by fear was now learning to rule by respect and strategic fear, from a distance. The monster was at the door, not in the house. Years later, at a charity gala for the city's art museum, a rare public appearance, a young reporter managed to get close to the legendary, reclusive Don Costa and his wife. "Mrs. Costa," the reporter asked, "your survival is an incredible story. What got you through those dark years of recovery?" Allegra, elegant in a dark blue gown, her hand resting on Daniel's. "Love," she said simply, her gaze never leaving her husband's face. "A love that refused to die, and a lighthouse that always showed the way home." Daniel looked back at her, and in that look was a promise kept. The lonely Mafia boss was lonely no more. He had opened the door to a shocking truth, and it had led him not to ruin, but to redemption. The story of their love had a violent, painful middle. But its ending was quiet, strong, and built to last. They turned together, a united front, and walked into the rest of their lives. Thank you for WATC Chanji. Did this Mafia love story surprise you? If you were in Alina's position, would you have gone to Daniel? Comment yes or no and where you're watching from below. Don't forget to subscribe for more gripping tales of love, betrayal, and second chances.